Hello everyone, this is Manohar Reddy, Department of Cybersecurity, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today in this session, I am going to discuss about the next concept, demilitarized zone in networking. Demilitarized zone in networking. So demilitarized zone in networking. So generally, we are going to hack different types of servers, different types of mails, different types of data. We are going to hack different types of mails, servers, data and everything. But we have to protect all that servers, we have to protect all that data, we have to protect all that mails. So in generally what we need to do, we need to keep all the data in a safe way. We need to keep all the data in safe way, all the data in keep server to be safe. So for that, one reference we call it as a demilitarized zone. So in computer networks, a demilitarized zone, DMZ stands for demilitarized zone, is a physical or logical subnet that separates a local area network, from other untrusted networks, usually the public internet. So usually the public internet is one untrusted network. So from that, we are going to separate a local area network. Why? We have to maintain some safe and secure. So for that, we are separating a logical subnet as a local area network. We are separating a physical or logical subnet or local area connections. So from where we are going to separate them, we are separating it from untrusted networks. That is nothing but public internet. So we are going to create a separate network, that is a private network from public internet. So DMZ is also known as a perimeter networks or screened subnetworks. Perimeter networks or screened subnetworks. So any service provided to users on the public internet should be placed in the DMZ network. So any service provided to user on the public internet should be placed in the DMZ network. So this DMZ network is a safe and secure service. So all the data you can place in the middle of demilitarized zone, so that the data is to be safe and the server is to be safe. So some of the most common of these services include web services, email services, domain name system services, and the file transfer protocol services, and the proxy services. So these are all the services which are provided to users on the public internet should be placed in demilitarized zone. So servers and resources in the demilitarized zone are accessible from internet, but the rest of the internal LAN remains unreachable. So servers and resources of that network, the DMZ, are accessible from the internet, but the rest of all internal LAN remains, it is unreachable. This approach provides an additional layer of security to the local area network because it restricts the hacker's ability to directly access internal servers and data from the internet. So from all these points, what we have to understand is, we are going to understand that internal LAN is to be protected, internal data is to be protected with the help of some restriction of the LAN that protected by this additional layer, that is called demilitarized zone. The term DMZ comes from the geographic buffer zone that was set up between North Korea and South Korea at the end of Korean War. So from there this DMZ comes. From there, this DMZ word comes. So what is meant by a subnet? We already said that it is a physical or logical subnet. It is a physical or logical subnet that separates a local area connection. So from these, what is meant by subnet? It is a segmented piece of larger network. It is a segmented piece of larger network. More specifically, subnets are a logical portion of IP network into multiple. That is nothing but you can divide that internet protocol address into multiple or smaller network segments. So multiple or smaller network segments. Suppose you can take this is one IP address 1.110. So you can separate all these. You can separate this all IP address into small segments. So this is one segment. This is one segment. This is one segment. This is one segment. You can separate this IP network into multiple or smaller network segments. So internet protocol is the method for sending data from one computer to another computer over the internet. So each computer or host, you can say that each computer or each host or each system or each device, you can say, you can pronounce in different ways. So on the internet has at least one IP address as unique identifier. It having each and every system having its own identifier, that is IP address. That is, you can say that it is a unique identifier. So this is way you can understand from this demilitarized zone for the local area connections. So why are demilitarized zones are important? Why we are giving the importance to creating or mentioning the demilitarized zone section? It provides a level of network segmentation. It provides a level of network segmentation that helps to protect internal corporate networks. That helps to protect internal corporate networks. So these subnetworks restrict remote access to internal servers and resources. So what the subnetworks doing? The subnetworks restrict the remote access to accessing these internal servers as well as resources and making it difficult for attackers to access the internal network. So it maintains a secure connection or it maintains a restriction methods to do not access for the attackers of the internal network. The demilitarized zone isolates these resources, so if they are compromised, the attack is unlikely to cause exposure, damage or loss. So if the demilitarized zone is isolated with the resources, then it is compromised. The attack is unlikely to cause exposure or damage or loss. So for this purpose, we are going to build this demilitarized zone as important. And how does a demilitarized zone work actually? So how it works to protect the servers, protect the data and everything. So demilitarized zones function as a buffer zone between the public internet and private network. So demilitarized zone is a function. It is as a buffer zone between this public network and private network. Public internet and private network. So this is the public internet, and this is the private network. This is a private network as enterprise LAN. So demilitarized zone subnet is deployed between two firewalls. These two are the two firewalls. In between these two, this is the demilitarized zone subnet. Demilitarized zone subnet is deployed between two firewalls. So all inbound network packets are then screened using a firewall or other security appliance before they arrive at these servers hosted in the demilitarized zone. So whenever the data is entered into this demilitarized zone, it should be screened with these two firewalls. So before they arrive at the server hosted in the demilitarized zone. So a network demilitarized zone sits between two firewalls, creating a semi-safe buffer zone between the internet and enterprise LAN. If better prepared threat actors pass through the first firewall, they must then gain unauthorized access devices in the demilitarized zone before they can do any damage. So, if better prepared threat actors pass through the first firewall, they must gain unauthorized access to the services, the demilitarized zone before they can do any damage. Those systems are likely to be hardened against such attacks. Those systems are likely to be hardened against such attacks. So, to enter into the data inside of the servers or services, it should be screened with this first firewall or else second firewall. So with this firewall, if it is compromised with this channel, with this demilitarized zone, again it should be screened with the second firewall. Again it should be screened with the second firewall, so that the screening purpose to creating the safe and secure purpose, these two firewalls are used here to protect the data from unauthorized access. So what are the benefits of using this demilitarized zone? So we are creating the demilitarized zone using the two firewalls. Okay, but what are the benefits of using this demilitarized zone actually? So the primary benefit of a demilitarized zone is that it offers from the public internet access to certain secure services while maintaining a buffer between those users and the private internal network. So there are several security benefits from this buffer, including the following. The first one is access control. This is the first benefit by using this demilitarized zone. So the demilitarized zone network provides access control to services outside an organization's network perimeters that are accessed from the internet. So it provides access control. Those who wants to access the resources from outside the organizations, outside the internet, those can be restricted. And the second one, network reconnaissance prevention. So a demilitarized zone also prevents an attacker from being able to scope out potential targets within the network. So it prevents a potential target on the network also. Even if a system within the demilitarized zone is compromised, the internal firewall is also present there. So the internal firewall still protects the private network, as we seen in the previous diagram. So if this first firewall is compromised, then the second firewall helps to protect the LAN connection or protect the local area network to do not access into the local. So that is what network reconnaissance prevention and protection against internet protocol spoofing. So in some cases, attackers attempt to bypass access control restrictions by spoofing an authorized IP address to impersonate another device on the network. Some of the attackers uses bypassing mechanism with the help of that spoofed address that impersonate another device on the network. So this is what we will get the benefits by using this demilitarized zone. And how the architecture and design of demilitarized zone networks. So there are two basic methods are used to either one or two firewalls. There are two basic methods are using to keep the data is to be safe or server is to be safe. Either one or two firewalls. So most modern DMZs are designed to with two firewalls. The most of the demilitarized zone are created with the help of two firewalls. The more secure approach to creating demilitarized zone network is a dual firewall configuration. So the dual firewall configuration is nothing but creating this firewall and creating this firewall. So two firewalls you have to put in between the local area network and the public internet. So in which two firewalls are deployed with the demilitarized zone network positioned between them. So this is the demilitarized zone. It placed between these two firewalls. It placed between these two firewalls to do not access this public internet into the private network. Private network. So do not enter the do not access of the attackers. Do not have access of the attackers to enter into the enterprise local area network with the help of this public internet. So for this purpose, these two firewalls are used. So the first firewall is also called the perimeter firewall. The first firewall is also called as perimeter firewall. Is configured to allow only external traffic. Only this is the public internet which is going to give the external data. So it allows to only external traffic destined for the demilitarized zone. So this firewall is configured as a perimeter firewall that allows only external traffic. Destined for the demilitarized zone. So it allows external traffic. The second or internal firewall only allows traffic from the demilitarized zone to the internal network. Here, the internal network represents enterprise LAN. So the dual firewall approach is considered more secure. Because two devices must be compromised before an attacker can access to the internal LAN. So here the dual firewall approach is considered more secure because two devices must be compromised before an attacker can access the internal LAN. So the attacker wants to access this internal LAN. To access this internal LAN, he has to satisfy these two firewalls to be compromised. He has to compromise these two firewalls compromised. So security controls can be tuned specifically for each network segment. So here the security controls, these two firewalls are called as security controls. They can be tuned specifically for each network segment coming from external traffic. So for example, a network intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system located in demilitarized zone could be configured to block all traffic except hypertext transfer protocol secure request to transmission control protocol port 443. So in the network intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system located in demilitarized zone could be configured to block all the traffic with the help of different protocols except hypertext transfer protocol secure that requests the transmission control protocol port number 443. So it resides in between the dual firewall configuration, and they can block all the unnecessary data coming from public internet into the private network. They block all the network traffic which is not related to the content is going to be stopped from external firewall or internal firewall. If external firewall is compromised, then internal firewall is to be screened to enter into the local area network. So this is the way we can understand the architecture, how designed for the demilitarized zone. And examples that are using or examples that are keep the data is to be safe in the demilitarized zone is some of the various ways demilitarized zones are used. Some of the various ways that are used, including the following some services. So the first one is what? Cloud services. So some cloud services such as Microsoft Azure use a hybrid security approach. Microsoft Azure uses a hybrid security approach in which a demilitarized zone is implemented between an organization's on-premises network and the virtual network. Organizations, on-premises network and virtual network. So they implemented this hybrid security approach in a demilitarized zone. So for examples like Microsoft Azure. So we can access the different types of data from the cloud because of the cloud services are placed between this demilitarized zone because this demilitarized zone is a safe or a secure server or secure place, or it is a safe buffer zone. It contains, or it placed between two firewalls. So that's why all the cloud services we are going to retrieve different types of services with the help of demilitarized zone is to be very safe and secure. And the next, home networks. A demilitarized zone can also be useful in home network in which computers and other devices. So the demilitarized zone works for not only the services, it is also for hardware device also, in which computer and other devices are connected to the internet using a broadband router and configured into the LAN. So with the help of broadband router, we are connecting a public internet to the private network. So that is also configured with the help of this demilitarized zone. And industrial control systems, ICS, industrial control systems. So demilitarized zone provides a potential solution is a targeting solution to the security risks of ICSES. So ICS stands for industrial control systems. And industrial equipment such as the turbine engines or ICS are being merged with the Information Technology Act, which makes production environments smarter and more efficient. Those are all made production environments to be smarter, and moreover it is become an efficient, but it is also creates a larger threat surface. So these are all some demilitarized zone is creating as an examples. Next, what is mean by demilitarized zone attacks? So what is meant by demilitarized zone attacks? The public face of the demilitarized zone keeps attackers from seeing the contents of the internal private network. So the public face of the demilitarized zone keeps attackers from seeing the contents of the internal private network. They are not able to give a chance to see the contents of the internal private network. If attackers do manage to compromise the servers, if attacker wants to manage all the servers by giving some different scenarios, the servers within the demilitarized zone, they are still isolated from the private network. By the demilitarized zone internal barrier. So public firewall is protected for the public internet, and the private firewall is protected for the private network. So if demilitarized zone is compromised, then this private network is not able to see the contents of this private network. So what demilitarized zones are used for actually? So demilitarized zone networks have been an important part of enterprise network security for almost as long as firewalls have been in use. So they are very, very important for enterprise network security for almost as long as have been firewalls used. They are deployed for similar reasons to protect sensitive organizational systems and protect sensitive organizational resources. So to protecting sensitive organizational systems and to protecting sensitive organizational resources. So demilitarized zone networks are often used for the following. So they are offered for what? Isolate and keep potential target systems separate from internal networks. They are always trying to make an internal networks are to be isolated. And internal networks are to be isolated and reduce and control access to those systems by external users. So reduce and give the control of access to those systems by external users and host corporate resources to make some of them available to authorized external users. So they are going to give the corporate resources or corporate sensitive organization systems to be only authorized external users. They are going to allow only authorized external users. Those who are not authorized, they are not going to allow them. They are not going to allow them. So this is the way the attacker trying to attack on the internal network, but the demilitarized zone incorporates with the firewalls is to be protected as a firewall configuration. So this is all about the demilitarized zone in the network. So in this session, what we learned once we revised it. So here we discussed about the demilitarized zone. So what is meant by demilitarized zone? So demilitarized zone is a buffer zone or safe zone that creates with a dual firewall configuration. And it is also said to be a physical or logical subnet that separate a local area network from other untrusted networks. That is nothing but public internet. So this is also called as a perimeter networks or screened subnetworks. Perimeter networks are screened subnetworks. So any service provided to the user on the public internet should be placed in the demilitarized zone network. So here the subnet or subnetworks works for the demilitarized zone, as we can see here. And the next, why demilitarized zone is to be very important, because it provides an additional layer of network segmentation that protects internal corporate networks. And how this demilitarized zone works actually. So it contains the demilitarized zone is creating for protecting all the different types of routers, different types of servers, mail servers, web servers and all. So all the servers, all the data is to be in a safe zone, that is a buffer zone, with the help of placing in between these two firewalls. So here the private internet or public internet that is accessible into the demilitarized zone if and only if the first firewall is to be compromised, and the second firewall is to be compromised if it is the compromised of first firewall. So the attacker tries to attack from the public internet into the demilitarized zone is not an easy task to enter into this demilitarized zone. So that all the data is to be safe and secure. So this is the way we can understand that how it works actually. And what are the benefits if we are using this demilitarized zone? So we can give the control of access. Based on the authorization. Those who are authorized users, those who are authorized service, we can give the chance to access them. And to use the network reconnaissance prevention also. And the protection against internet protocol spoofing. Protection against IP spoofing. So these are all these benefits, and some of the architecture design networks, how it looks like with the help of perimeter firewall, with the help of internal firewall, how it configured. All this we discussed in this session. And these are some examples that we are using in real time as a demilitarized zone services. So cloud services we are using as a demilitarized zone services. So the example is Microsoft Azure, so which is implemented in between organizations on premises network and the virtual network. So one is acting as a public network, and one is acting as a private network. And home networks. So home networks also we are using the demilitarized zone in between the network devices such as computers and devices. And the next one, industrial control systems. Industrial control systems. It provides a potential solutions to take care of the security risks. So these are all some examples that we are using in the DMZ services. And what is meant by demilitarized zone attack? So public phase of the demilitarized zone keeps attackers from seeing the contents of the internal private network. So if attackers do manage the compromised services with the demilitarized zone, they are still isolated with the private network. So they are not able to. So because of this configuration involves, the outsiders are not able to. The outsiders are not able to attack. Outsiders are not able to attack. So what demilitarized zones are used for actually? So they are demilitarized zones are deployed for similar reasons to protect the sensitive organization system and resources, and they can isolate and keep potential target systems separate from internal networks, and reduce and control access to those systems by external users also, and host corporate resources to make some of them available to authorized external users. So these are all the different types of demilitarized zone advantages, uses, and what is meant by attack, what is the demilitarized zone architecture, and how does it work actually. So these are all we explained in this session. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.